If your Social Security runs out on the 10th and the next check isn't for 20 more days, listen to this story. Not for comfort, for a plan. At the pharmacy, Helen Calloway handed over a prescription for melatonin. Her doctor had ordered it for insomnia, and the pharmacist rang it up. $18.40. Helen opened her wallet and counted. $11 and some coins. 9 days until her check. Behind her, 3 people in line, and the pharmacist waiting, and the silence loud enough to hear Helen sorting through quarters. Not enough? The pharmacist asked, not quietly. We have valerian root for $3.90, also for sleep. Someone behind her let out a small laugh. Friends, write in the comments, where are you from, and does your Social Security last you to the end of the month? We need to know who's listening. And hit that like button so this story reaches the people who need it right now. The clock on the wall ticked the way clocks only tick at night. Loud, insistent, with the cruel indifference of a mechanism that doesn't know the person next to it hasn't slept, and counts every click as if keeping score. 3 a.m. November. The ceiling was white, with a crack in the corner, and that crack had become as familiar to Helen Calloway over 3 years of insomnia as the lines on her own palm. Every branch, every turn, and if someone had asked her to draw it from memory, she could have done it with her eyes closed. Because with her eyes closed, she saw the crack more often than with them open. Close them, and the crack is still there, and sleep doesn't come, and doesn't come, and doesn't come. The pillow under her head, orthopedic, the third one she'd tried, had cost $49 at the bed and bath store on Delaware Avenue, and the saleswoman had promised anatomical cervical support in a physiologically correct position. But her head on the memory foam felt like lying on a brick wrapped in a pillowcase. Sort of soft, but hard. And her neck by morning ached so that she wanted to unscrew her head and set it on the nightstand until daybreak. The first pillow had cost $29. The second, $38, gel, with a cooling effect that cooled not her head but her last hopes. Because insomnia isn't in the pillow. Insomnia is in the head. And her head, after Frank's death, hadn't slept in 3 years. And no gel, no foam, and no anatomical support could fill the silence that moved into the house when Frank put his head on the steering wheel of the number 7 bus and didn't lift it again. Frank had driven the city bus for 31 years, Route 7, from the Amtrak station to the Marion Plaza. And every morning at 4:15, the front door would open and close with the same soft click. And the Buick's engine would start in the driveway, and Helen would hear it through the bedroom wall and pull the blanket higher and know, day has begun and Frank is in it. The click and engine was so regular that Helen's body used it as an alarm, not to wake up, but to feel safe enough to fall back asleep, because the sound meant Frank was out there, driving, and the world was turning, and turning meant normal. Frank died in 21. Heart attack behind the wheel, right at the Bellefontaine Avenue stop. 12 passengers aboard, none hurt because the bus was going slow and rolled to a stop against the curb. And Frank's foot found the brake even as his heart stopped. 31 years of habit, and habit saved 12 strangers and couldn't save Frank. The dispatcher called Helen at 7:42 a.m. She was still in bed. The Buick was still in the driveway. She hadn't heard the click that morning, and she'd slept through the silence, and the silence had been the sign, and she'd missed it. Social Security, $1,380. Property tax plus insurance, the house was paid off, Frank's one gift that outlasted him, $360. Medicare and Medigap and co-pays, $250. Medications, $130. Groceries, $340. Store brand everything. Chicken thighs on sale. Coffee so thin it tasted like hot brown water. Utilities, $200. Gas for the 2006 Camry Frank had maintained himself, $85. Total, 0. Not negative, 0. And 0 meant one unexpected bill from borrowing, and borrowing meant asking Andy or Val, and both burned with quiet shame she carried like a stone in a coat pocket. Nobody sees it, but it pulls you down. Andy called on Sundays. Son, from Columbus, 45, construction foreman, voiced the careful mix of concern and obligation that adult children use when the call is a duty, and the duty weighs more than the words. "You doing okay, Mum?" And okay covered everything. Sleep, money, loneliness, the crack on the ceiling, the clock that ticked, the 3 pillows that didn't work, all compressed into okay. And Helen always answered, fine, because fine was shorter than the truth and kinder to both of them. Sometimes Andy said, "I'll try to get down there soon." And soon, in Andy's mouth, had a half-life of about 6 weeks before it decayed into silence. And Helen understood this without resentment, because Andy had a wife and a job site and a life that didn't include a 2-hour drive on a Saturday to sit in his dead father's living room and say, "You doing okay, Mum?" in person instead of by phone. In the kitchen, on the counter by the window, sat the Singer. Black, gold decal, the machine Helen had sewed on for 28 years at the Marion Bedding Company before it closed in 2015. She'd brought it home on the last day, carried it herself. Then Frank died, and Helen covered it with a cloth, cotton, daisies, and the cloth had been on the machine for 3 years, and the machine under the cloth was like a seed under soil, covered but not dead. That night, sleepless, Helen got up at 4 and went to the kitchen, made instant coffee, sat at the table. And sitting there, with the coffee cooling and the clock ticking, she thought about her mother. Her mother had never bought a pillow. She made them. Cotton ticking, stuffed with buckwheat hulls from the feed store, dried lavender from the yard, sometimes cedar shavings. "Helen, lavender keeps the moths out and the mood up, 2 in 1, her mother used to say, and the saying was ridiculous and true, and the pillows smelled like summer and sleep had come easy on them, not because Helen was young, but because the pillow was right. Helen looked at the Singer under its daisy cloth, looked at the kitchen cabinet where she kept buckwheat groats, bought on sale and never cooked, looked at the dried lavender in a jar on the windowsill, picked at the community garden last August. Cedar shavings. Frank's workshop still had a bin of them, dry as paper. She stood up, pulled the cloth off the Singer. The gold decal caught the light. She pressed the pedal. The machine whirred, caught, steadied, and the sound filled the kitchen the way a voice fills an empty house. She sat down, pulled cotton fabric from the hall closet, cut 2 rectangles, pinned them, fed them through. The stitch was straight, the tension right. 28 years of muscle memory. She filled the case with buckwheat hulls, a handful of dried lavender, a scoop of cedar shavings. Sewed the opening shut by hand, because closing a pillow is like closing a letter. The last stitch matters. She lay down. The hulls shifted under her head, finding the shape of her skull, not pushing back like foam, not collapsing like down, but settling, adjusting, holding. The lavender rose faintly, garden soft, the way it smelled on her mother's porch in August. Helen closed her eyes. She woke at 7:15. 5 hours, without waking, without counting the branches of the ceiling crack. The first full night in over a year. That afternoon, Tammy from next door came to borrow sugar and stopped in the hallway, sniffing. "Lavender. My grandmother used to dry lavender on the porch. I haven't smelled that since I was 12. Helen showed her the pillow. Tammy squeezed it, held it to her face. "Can you make me one? I haven't slept through the night since my hip replacement. That memory foam thing is like sleeping on a hot sponge." Helen hesitated, then said, "I'll need a few days." She made Tammy's pillow in 3 hours, Cut, sew, fill, stitch. And the rhythm came back, the way a song comes back to someone who hasn't sung it in years. The first bar's shaky, then the body takes over, and it sounds right. She added extra cedar for Tammy because a stiff neck from hip surgery needs support, not softness. Tammy paid $35, pulled the bills from her bathrobe pocket and set them on the hall table. The way people set down money when paying for help is not a transaction but a thank you. $35 for a pillow that cost $9 in materials and 3 hours of work was honest. And honest is the best price. A week later, Tammy called, voice rested and clear. "Helen, I'm sleeping. 4 months I haven't slept, and now I sleep. I put my head down, and the buckwheat shifts, and the lavender starts, and I close my eyes, and that's it. You saved my nights." Dr. Irene Walsh, Helen's primary care doctor, a practical woman with reading glasses on a lanyard who had practiced family medicine in Marion for 22 years and believed in evidence even when it came from unexpected places, heard about the pillow from Tammy at a routine appointment. Tammy hadn't come in for insomnia, she'd come for a blood pressure check. But she couldn't stop talking about the pillow. And Dr. Walsh, who had spent 2 decades listening to people talk about things they hadn't come in for, recognised the difference between a patient making conversation and a patient reporting a result. She called Helen that evening. "Ms. Calloway, Tammy Briggs tells me she's sleeping through the night on a buckwheat pillow you made. First time in 4 months. I have 3 patients with chronic insomnia, 1 post-cardiac, 1 with migraines from cervical strain, 1 general. I won't prescribe a pillow, but I will recommend one. May I give them your number?" All 3 called within a week. All 3 bought. Victor, 68, post-cardiac, couldn't sleep because sleep meant letting go of control. And letting go after a heart attack is terrifying. And the terror lived in his chest, next to the scar. "I fall asleep now. 20 minutes of tossing, but I fall asleep. Before, 3 hours. 20 minutes is... I don't have a word for it." The migraine woman, Linda, 49, neck strain from a desk job that followed her into retirement because the neck doesn't know you've retired. Head doesn't hurt. Second day. "I don't understand why the $60 one is worse than yours for $35. But it is. And facts are facts." Dr. Walsh called after the 3rd report, and her voice carried something Helen hadn't heard from a doctor before. Genuine surprise. 3 for 3. 100%. Melatonin works 70% if I'm lucky. Sleep medication has side effects. Your pillow, 3 for 3. Side effect, lavender. As a physician, I should say this isn't evidence-based. As a person, it works. Val came that evening. Retired nurse, casserole, and an idea. Saw the spare pillow on the couch. Sell it. Flyer at Dr. Walsh's. Bulletin board, everyone posts there. And next door. Val, who buys a buckwheat pillow when Walmart has memory foam for $20? Helen, the 20 didn't help. The 38 didn't help. The 49 didn't help. Yours for 35 helped you and 3 patients. 3 for 3. Yours is better. And for better, people pay. Raise the price, actually. 35 is too low for 3 hours of handwork. But start there. The flyer went up, Val's block letters. Handmade sleep pillows. Buckwheat hull, cedar, lavender. Natural fill. $35. Helen Calloway. And her number. 2 calls the first week. A woman bought 2, herself and her husband. The husband snorted. Buckwheat is for pancakes. 3 nights later, he asked, "Can you pack it tighter? The rustling helps me drift off." A man bought one for his mother after back surgery. Neck pain, the store pillow clamped. Helen's cedar-heavy version helped. He called back. First night without painkillers. I'll take one for myself. Money came in and smelt different from Social Security. Earned. Lavender and cedar on her fingers, invisible but present. Andy found out through the small-town chain. Val's daughter told her husband, who worked construction with Andy. He called. "Mum, you're selling pillows? There's a flyer at the doctor's. People will think I don't take care of you." "Andy, I'm not selling pillows. I'm giving people their sleep back." "Mum, that's the same thing, just said nicer." And said nicer from a son who didn't understand the difference between sewing pillows and giving people sleep, hung between Marion and Columbus, heavy, because Andy saw the pillow and Helen saw Tammy sleeping, Victor falling asleep in 20 minutes, Linda whose head didn't hurt for 2 days. Between a pillow and sleep, there's a distance Andy couldn't cross by phone. Because sleep is invisible, and a pillow is visible, and visible is embarrassing, and invisible is hard to explain. Helen said nothing after hanging up. Not from hurt, but from the fatigue of explaining. The humankind, the weariness of knowing you're right while someone you love calls it said nicer, which is a polite way of saying nonsense. And nonsense from your own child hurts in a place that's not the head. The next evening, Dr. Walsh called again, and this time her voice was conspiratorial, the off-protocol tone doctors use when recommending something that works but isn't in any textbook. "Helen, I know someone. Elena Garza runs the Marion Wellness Centre on Prospect. PT clinic, 30 treatment beds. Patients lie 2 to 3 hours, electrotherapy, ultrasound, and everyone complains about the pillows. Synthetic, bulk bought, sweaty. Elena wants to meet you. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. And 30 beds hung in the kitchen air. 30 pillows at 30 each. $900. More than half a month's Social Security. For pillows stuffed with buckwheat and lavender, sewn on a singer. By hands that had been idle for 3 years and remembered everything. Elena Garza's office was on the second floor. White coat, short hair, a planner and 2 pens on the desk, one working, one backup, and a backup pen on a clinic director's desk is the mark of someone who can't stand interruption. If one runs dry, the other catches it. The room smelled of disinfectant and something clinical. Not hospital stale, but private clinic clean. The kind of clean that costs money. Helen set the pillow on the desk next to the planner. It looked homemade and a little awkward, the way a person looks at a party where they've been invited but don't quite belong. Elena picked it up, kneaded it professionally. The way you test fill density, hands moving with understanding. Held it to her face, inhaled. Lavender? Lavender and cedar shavings. Base is buckwheat hulls. Conforms to the head, doesn't trap heat. Air circulates between the hulls so there's no sweating. My mother made them this way, and I make them this way. How much per unit? 30 for bulk. I need 30. 30 treatment beds, day patients, 2 to 3 hours each, electrotherapy, ultrasound, and every one of them complains about the pillows we buy. Synthetic, sweaty, stiff. 1 month. Can you do it? 30 in a month. 1 a day. 3 hours each. Helen calculated by seamstress habit. 28 years of counting yardage per batch. Fabric, hulls, shavings, lavender, zipper, thread. About $9 per pillow. 30 minus 9, 21 net, times 30, $630. Plus savings on bulk materials. Close to 700. I can do it, she said, the way people say it who spent decades meeting factory quotas. Short, certain, because the quota at Marion Bedding had been fiercer. 20 sheet sets per shift, 8 hours, And if you fell behind, the floor supervisor's look said more than any words. The singer ran every day, 7 to 10, one pillow per morning, and the clatter became the morning sound of the house, replacing the clock the way music replaces noise, not by volume, but by meaning. Helen bought cotton ticking from Zena at the fabric store. 120 thread count, won't shrink, won't bleed, take it, Helen. Buckwheat hulls from Bill the farmer, by the sack. Lavender from the jar, and, when that ran out, from the community garden's late gleaning. Cedar from Frank's workshop, which still smelled of sawdust and WD-40, even though Frank hadn't stood in it for 3 years. And every scoop of shavings was another piece of Frank travelling into someone else's sleep. The apartment smelled of lavender so strongly that Val, stopping by for coffee, paused in the doorway. Helen, this isn't a house, it's Provence. Provence in a frame house in Marion. Helen accepted the compliment, because Provence is lavender, and lavender was her work, and her work was a phrase she hadn't used in 3 years. Andy called in December. Wednesday, not Sunday, which meant a reason. Christmas. Mum, can't make it. Job site's behind. Super's losing it. I'm crew lead. If I leave, we don't finish. I'll Venmo you $200. $200. Helen set the phone down and sat in the kitchen. $200 from a son who wouldn't come was not money, but a substitution. Dollars for presents, numbers for an embrace. And the substitution burned not in her wallet, but somewhere deeper, where a mother's pride lives. Pride said, don't take it. Arithmetic said, 1380 minus everything equals 0, and 0 plus 200 equals December with food instead of pasta. Between pride and arithmetic, a gap, and the bridge across was earning it herself. 3 weeks till the holiday, and 3 weeks was a deadline that ticked like the clock on the wall, except the clock counted nights, and the deadline counted days. By mid-January, 15 done, stacked on the couch, the living room a rectangle of lavender and quiet industry. Then came the call. Elena Garza, voice taut, the way a thread sounds before it snaps. Helen, we have an inspection. State Health Department, routine. They check everything. Equipment, procedures, bedding. Your pillows. The inspector asked, natural fill. Where's the material safety documentation? Sourcing records for the hulls? Anything on the lavender? Helen, do you have paperwork? Documentation, safety records, sourcing. 3 words, each heavier than 30 pillows, landing on the kitchen table, next to the lavender bag and the spool of thread. Cold. Foreign. From a world where a pillow isn't sewn but certified, and certification costs not lavender, but nerves, time and money Helen didn't have. No, Helen said. I sew at home, on a singer, with buckwheat from a farmer. I'm not a factory. Helen, I understand. But without documentation, I can't keep them on the beds when the inspector comes. I need something. A receipt from the supplier, anything on the hulls, proof the lavender is pesticide-free. And you should register as self-employed. It protects you. The inspection is in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Helen sat at the kitchen table after hanging up, and the singer sat on the counter under the overhead light, and 15 pillows sat on the couch, smelling of lavender. And all of it, the machine, the pillows, the $700, the rhythm she'd built since October, could collapse in 3 weeks over a piece of paper. Val came that evening, listened, didn't panic, nurses triage, not panic. First, the farmer. He sells hulls. He'll have a receipt book, maybe a batch record. Ask him. Second, the lavender. You grew it, community garden, organic, no pesticides. Write it down, date it, sign it. Self-declaration, and for a cottage product, that's enough. Third, self-employment. Go to the library, File Schedule C with your taxes. $400 a year is the threshold. You're past it. Register and you're legal. It costs nothing and gives you the right to work without looking over your shoulder. The farmer, Bill, Route 95, had a receipt book. Wrote Helen a dated receipt. £50 buckwheat hulls, food grade, sourced from his own crop. Need something official? County Extension can run a batch test. $20, takes a week. Helen paid. Certificate came in 6 days. Hulls tested for moisture and foreign material. Meets USDA food grade standards. Lavender. One-page statement. Grown at Marion Community Garden, Plot 14. No pesticides. Harvested August. Air-dried. Val witnessed and signed. Not legally bulletproof, but honest. Self-employment. 2 hours at the library computer. The librarian helping. She'd filed her own Schedule C for a jewellery side business and knew every screen. Sole proprietor. Handmade sleep products. Filed. Done. Helen called Elena with the paperwork list. Elena exhaled audibly. Bring everything when you deliver. The singer ran through the rest of January and into February. 7 to 10, 1 pillow per morning. Helen weighed each batch of hulls on the kitchen scale because consistency matters. Too light and it collapses, too heavy and it won't conform, and the right amount was about £3 per pillow, plus a handful of cedar and a pinch of lavender added the way her mother had. Not by weight, but by smell. And the right smell was garden soft, not perfume sharp. February 10th, 2 days early. 30 pillows in garbage bags. Not elegant, but clean. Loaded into the Camry's back seat and trunk. The car smelled so strongly of lavender that at the one traffic light on Prospect, a woman in the next lane rolled her window down and mouthed something that might have been nice air freshener. Helen carried them in 4 trips, the reception nurse holding the door on the last 2, and Elena met her in the hallway. She picked up 1 pillow, kneaded it, checked the seam, turned it over. Picked up a second, then a third. Every one the same. Even stitching, fill distributed right, scent present but not overpowering. Helen, you're a professional. And professional, from a clinic director who'd handled factory products and hospital supply catalogues, was not flattery, but a verdict. And verdicts don't depreciate. Helen handed over the folder. Farmer's receipt, batch certificate, lavender declaration, self-employment printout. Elena flipped through, nodded, set it in the inspection binder. This is more paperwork than half my licensed suppliers send. $900. Cash. Elena counted it on her desk. 20s, 50s, and Helen put it in her purse and felt the difference. Because for 3 years, her purse had been accustomed to holding 3 or 4 bills, and 900 was physical weight. The way hope is physical when it finally shows up after a long absence. The inspection passed. February 12th, the state inspector walked through the clinic, checked equipment, procedures, bedding, picked up one of Helen's pillows from bed 7, squeezed it, read the batch certificate taped to the binder page, wrote a note, moved on. No flags, no citations. Compliant, the form said, and compliant was the most beautiful word Helen had read all year. More beautiful than any pharmacy receipt, because compliant meant she was allowed to keep doing what she did, legally, openly, without apology. Private orders kept coming, through the doctor's office, through next door, through the chain. Tammy told a friend, the friend told a co-worker, the co-worker told a sister-in-law. 5 or 6 a month at 35, 175 to 210. Eleanor would reorder quarterly. Hulls compress, pillows need refreshing. Helen did the math. 900 every 3 months from the clinic, plus 200 a month private. Average, about 500 net. Plus Social Security, $13.80. Around 1900, and 1900 for a woman who 6 months ago was at 0 was not a number but air. She bought the melatonin, $18.40. Same pharmacy, same pharmacist, same counter. And this time Helen counted out a 20 and a 1 and waited for the change without hurrying, without the silence of quarters, without the laugh from behind. She bought it not because she needed it, the pillow worked better than anything in a bottle, but because she could. And could, in a pharmacy where 6 months ago she'd stood sorting coins, feels different from can't. It feels like standing straighter and breathing easier and looking the pharmacist in the eye. Made a dentist appointment, $160 for the tooth that had ached since fall, and in the free clinic the wait was 3 months, and the tooth wouldn't wait. And Helen, for the first time in 3 years, told herself, I can afford this. And the sentence had the weight of a door opening. Sent Andy a leather belt for his birthday, $42, and with my own money, was stitched into the package the way lavender is stitched into a pillow. Invisible, but the person who put it there knows it's there, and that's enough. Andy came in March, Saturday, unannounced, with Ashley. The living room smelled of lavender and cedar. The singer sat on the counter without its daisy cloth. 5 pillows waited on the couch. Ashley sat down, picked up a pillow, put it behind her neck, leaned back, closed her eyes for 10 seconds. Opened them. This is incredible. My neck hasn't felt this good in months. Our memory foam does nothing. Andy stood in the doorway, watching his wife lean into his mother's pillow. And something in his face changed. Not dramatically, but the way a face changes when someone realizes they were wrong about something they'd dismissed. Mum, he said, quiet. Not the voice that said, people will think I don't feed you, but a different one. Can you make one for Ashley? Her neck's been bad since she started working from home. Our pillow, memory foam, sleep technology, whatever, she wakes up worse. And can you make one from the son who 2 months ago called it the same thing, just said nicer, held more than any apology? Recognition. And recognition from your own child costs more than any inspection, more than $900, more than anything you can count. I'll make it, Helen said. Cedar for the neck, firmer, holds better, and I'll add mint. Does Ashley like mint? I don't know, Andy said. Find out, Helen answered, and find out from mother to son about his wife was not a question but a lesson. Find out what she likes and put it in the pillow, and the pillow will remember, and she will remember, and real memory isn't in foam. It's in the mint someone added because they knew. The singer. Black, gold decal, no cloth. 3 years the daisy cloth had covered it, the way soil covers a seed. The seed waited, and the cloth was off, and the decal caught the morning light, and the pedal answered, and the clatter filled the kitchen every day from 7 to 10. And in a house where the only sound had been a ticking clock, the singer now ran, and the clock lost, because the clatter was about life, and the ticking was about time, and life matters more. And Helen Calloway knew this for certain, because she hadn't slept for 3 years and survived. And the singer hadn't run for 3 years and survived. And both were working, and the work was worth $1,900 a month, and the smell of lavender on fingers that don't wash clean and don't need to. To wrap up this story, let's look at what Helen did to reach her goals and cover her needs. What did Helen do? She pulled the cloth off a sewing machine that had sat idle for 3 years and started making sleep pillows. Buckwheat hulls, cedar shavings, dried lavender. She started with herself. Insomnia for 3 years, store-bought pillows didn't help, remembered her mother's method, sewed her own, and slept through the night for the first time in a year. Told her doctor, who recommended her to 3 patients. All reported improvement. A flyer at the clinic brought private customers. A physical therapy centre ordered 30 for their daybeds. When an inspection demanded documentation, she got a supplier certificate, registered as self-employed, and kept working. Legally, openly, without fear. 3 lessons. First, solving your own problem can become a product. Helen didn't plan a business. She fixed her insomnia, and the fix turned out to be what dozens of people needed. If you found something that helps with a problem you're facing, look around. People nearby have the same problem and will pay for your answer. Second, a doctor is the best marketing. A recommendation from Dr. Walsh brought customers no flyer ever could, because people trust their doctor, and that trust transfers to the product. Third, paperwork is not the enemy, it's a shield. A receipt, a certificate, a self-employment filing, that's not red tape. It's the right to work openly and without fear, and that right is worth the effort. Look at your own hands. They can do more than you think. Write in the comments, what do you do best? Sow, preserve, grow, build? Someone will read it and realize they can too. Hit that like button so this story reaches the people who need it right now. And subscribe. Every week we share stories of people who stopped being embarrassed and started earning with what they do best.